everybody. So, we're going to talk this week about a few different things. First, let's start with just these things. These are called box and whisker plots, and there's two of them. One for brand A of a cell phone and one for brand B of a cell phone. So maybe like Google versus iPhone or something. Um, and It says this is about the battery life and hours of two brands of cell phones. And I just want you to think, what does this tell us? What do you notice about it? And what do you wonder? So I want you to do this as your bell ringer. And we will talk through how to analyze these things and how to make these things here in just a minute. So go ahead and write down on your bell ringer, what do you notice and what do you wonder about these two box and whisker plots? Okay, now hopefully they've given you some guided notes that I printed for you guys, and if not, just use a piece of paper. But my goal is that there'd be someone who hands you guys the guided notes for this, the printed copies of it. And what we're going to talk about first is how to find quartiles of a data set, interquartile range, and how to make a box and whiskers plot. So in your notes, things that you're going to fill in, there are three quartiles. Remember, we played a game last week. We said that quartile sounds like quarters, right? And that's true. So there are three numbers who split the data into four quarters. So those three numbers that split the data into four quarters are called quartiles. There's quartile one, quartile two, which is also the median of your data, and quartile three. So how to find it? Quartile 2 is always the first one you can find because it's the middle of the whole data set, okay? The number right in the middle of your data set, your median, that's quartile 2. That's the easiest to find. But of course, if you use Desmos and you put your list into Desmos, you can type in quartile parentheses the name of your list, comma 1, and it'll tell you what the quartile is. The name of your list, comma 2, or quartile, the name of your list, comma 3, and that'll tell you the different quartiles. But if we're just looking at a small list, it's not that hard. The middle number is the median, which is also called Q2. Then you look at the first numbers and you figure out what's in the middle, and that will be Q1. Then you look at the last numbers after Q2 and you figure out what's in the middle, and that'll be Q3. So it's just the middle, and then it's the middle of the first half and the middle of the second half. That's Q2, Q1, and Q3. And again, in Desmos, if you type your list in of your data, let's say this example had 11 numbers in it, and then you can name it Q, and then if you type a 1 right after it, it'll make a little Q. But if you name it Q1, that'll help you later. And then to get it to do it, you just type in quartile parentheses, the name of your data list, which we called L, comma 1, quartile L, comma 2, quartile L, comma 3. But again, if you give it a name, Q1 equals quartile, Q2 equals quartile, Q3 equals quartile 3. Then later on, when we do some other stuff with these quartiles, we can just use these names, which is very handy. So for example, remember range was just the biggest minus the smallest. So interquartile range is when you take the biggest quartile minus the smallest quartile. And it tells us about the box and whiskers plot, how wide that box is going to be, and it tells us where 50% of our data is, our middle 50. So again, if we're looking at the IQR of our data set, we've got our quartiles, and then the interquartile range. We'll just take this top one minus the bottom one. So again, if you've got your list in Desmos and you've already done Q1 and Q3 in there, then you can just call it, you can call it whatever you want. I called it I for interquartile range. That's just my name I gave it, el nombre. And then you tell it to do Q3 minus Q1, and it'll tell you what that answer is. Okay. Now you could also just look at it and go, oh, 354 minus 223 is 131, right? You don't have to use Desmos for that, but it is a time saver. Now, we've talked about outliers before, and Miss Flannery's age in the room of a bunch of high school seniors would be an outlier, but that's because it's just kind of obvious that it stands out. It's not always as obvious. So, one way to find outliers is to use the interquartile range to help us. And so we look for a number that is either smaller than this formula or bigger than this formula. And we're going to talk about how to do that. So, first, we've got to have our interquartile range. That's just a number that we figured out a second ago. And we knew that that's 131. Then we're going to look for a number that's either smaller than this or bigger than that. So let's figure out what this equals. Okay. Q1 minus whatever 1.5 times that 131 is. So Q1 is 223. So Q1 minus 1.5 times that interquartile range. So 223 minus 1.5 times 131, which gives us this. So that guy. So we'll look for a number that's smaller than this or a number that's bigger than Q3 plus. So Q1 minus or Q3 plus. So Q3 plus that gives us 550.5. So when we're looking at our data, are there any numbers that are smaller than 26 and a half? Nope. Or bigger than 550.5? Well, yeah, there is one there, right? So 944 is an outlier that is bigger than this. There's not one that's smaller than here, but there is one bigger than here. Okay. So that's one way to help us find it. And again, in Desmos, I didn't have anything written over here, but in Desmos, you can type in this formula Q1 minus 1.5. And then if you called it I above or Q3 plus 1.5 I in your list above when we were doing that a minute ago, yeah, right? Then you can have Desmos do that for you. Okay. All right. Now, box and whiskers plot. That was on the bell ringer, right? And it's a plot that highlights important features of a data set and it requires finding what's called the 5-number summary. And the 5-number summary is 5 numbers that are important. The minimum is the first one, Q1, Q2, Q3, and then the maximum data. And what happens is when you do these, you'll make a number line that includes all of your smallest to your biggest number that you got. Like in this example, it would go from 177 to 944, right? And then, well, I'll show you some more examples of this in a minute, but here we go. Okay, so if we were in the classroom, I'd be drawing this on the whiteboard, but here we go. So finding a box and whisker plot, got to find the 5-number summary first. So finding our box and whisker plot, let's start by finding the 5-number summary, okay? So we need our minimum, Q1, Q2, Q3, and our max number. So our minimum is 177. Our Q1 we already found was 223. Q2 was 266. And Q3 was 354. And our max is 944. Now, 944 was actually an outlier, and you have to make a decision about if you're going to include your outliers in your box and whisker or not. For now, we will include it. Okay? So the next step, that was step 1. Step 2, construct a horizontal scale that spans the range of the data. Okay, so I need a horizontal scale that goes from 177 to 944. Shoo. I'm just gonna go by tens, I guess. And I'll start at 170. No, that's gonna take forever. You know what? We are gonna actually not use this outlier because it's so big. So we're just gonna go to 398. Um, so I'll go by 25s, I think, to get there. 175, 200, 225, 375, 400. Okay, so that covers all my numbers except for that outlier, right? That was an outlier, so we are going to ignore that for this. And that's a decision you make with outliers. We're just going to count the data that's not crazy. So we're going to go to 398 here. All right, so now construct horizontal scale. Check. Now we're going to plot the 5 numbers above the horizontal scale. Okay, so my minimum was 177. So I'm going to put a dot about above and about where I think that 177 would be. Q1 was 223. So 223 looks like it'd be about right here. Q2 is 266. So maybe about right here. Q3 is 354. So maybe about right here. It won't let me draw right there. And then the max that I'm going to count is 398. So almost at 400. Okay. So those are my 5 numbers above it. All right. Now I'm going to draw a box above the horizontal scale from 2-1 to 2-3. So from 223 to 354. From 223 to 354, I'm going to make a box. And then it says draw a vertical line in the box at Q2. And Q2 is 226, so vertical line right here. Next step, we draw the whiskers from the minimum and the maximum. So from here out to the minimum and from here out to the maximum. And there we go, a box and whiskers plot by hand. Dun, 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 dun. Now, the helpful thing about this information is that it tells us that 25% of our data is in this space between 223 and 226. 25% of our data is in this space between 266 and 354. And then another quarter is smaller and another quarter is bigger. How to do this in Desmos. So once you've got your list in there, it's so cute. All you need to do is type the word box plot, parentheses L, and then you decide if you want to include or exclude the outliers. And if you exclude the outliers, it'll show that little dot way out there, but it'll only make the box plot go out to, you don't know if you can tell, but this is the 400. When I did mine by hand, that's about how far mine went. It went from 177 to 400. But if you take off that exclude outliers, it'll make the line go all the way out to that 994. Okay. So you have to make a decision there. Do you want to exclude it or include it so that the whiskers go all the way out to that outlier, or they kind of ignore that outlier? And that's up to you. Okay. But that's pretty cool. Box plot. Ka-chow. So the idea then is that you actually try to do this. And that you do the same idea. It says tuition costs and $1,000 for 25 liberal arts colleges are listed. Use technology to find the first, second, third quarter and make a box plot. So I will show you how to do that on Desmos real quick. Desmos. Loving the Desmos. I'm going to split screen like I always suggest you do to make your life easier. So you can see the data and your Desmos. So I'm going to type in my list. So I've got my list in there. Let me make sure it says 25. So hopefully that's right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, 25 numbers. So it should be good. So it says find the first, second, and third quartiles. All right. So Q1, I'm naming this Q1. I could just type in quartile parentheses, my list, comma, 1 for the first quartile, but I'm going to go ahead and call it Q1 equals. That way it labels it later and I can use that faster. So Q1, Q2, quartile L2, Q3, quartile L3. Bada bing, bada boom. There's my quartiles, quartile 1, 2, and 3. And then it says find the interquartile range. So I'm going to call it I equals, I don't have to name it, I can just do it, Q3 minus Q1, but I am going to name it so I don't forget what that was. My interquartile range is 19.5. Then it says to make a box plot. Okay, box plot of list L. Look at that. Now I don't see anything over here. So first I'm going to open this up so you can see a little bit better. And then I'm going to hit this zoom fit. It's going to zoom out to the numbers that I need because my numbers were in 30s, 50s, 60s ranges. So, and I've only got small numbers here. So if I hit zoom fit, haha, it shows my information. Now, I didn't calculate if there were any outliers, but if I didn't want to and I wanted this to tell me, if I click this button off, oh, nothing changed. So there are no outliers. Push it on, stays the same, no outliers. Kachiga. Okay. Now, as a quick reminder with Desmos, I don't know if you know this, guys, but if you log in with your Google account, then suddenly it'll put your name up here and you can save what you're working on. So I could call this, I could save it and I could call this 2.5 box plot. Then the next time I open up Desmos, if I log in again, if it still has my name up here, then I can go over here and I can open that box plot that I did before. And if I need to make another box plot, I just type the numbers in here now, right? And it still does everything else that I wanted it to do. It does it again. Okay. So you can save that and it'll save all the stuff you've done. Okay. There you go. Bottom line. So um, you should be able to do some of the Math Excel for this week by now. We are going to have a test next week. So get ready. And that's it. Does that make sense? All right. Happy Monday. I'll see you soon. Bye.